How to switch to running on and therefore burning fat. The basics of eating, digesting, fasting, using fat for carbs as fuel, and the ketogenic diet. Define fasting. People associate and mean different things by fasting. The commonality, no food. But does no food also include no drinks, or does it mean no calories at all? Or also no water? In general, strict fasting could be defined as a water fast with no calories. At least that's what most people probably see as fasting. But what about vitamins? One pill of my vitamins has 7 calories. Does that break my fast? Well, it depends on how breaking a fast is defined. Breaking a fast can be either done by just consuming calories, which would be a logical definition, or the biological one, meaning a food intake that throws you out of the fasting state. How about we call a meal breaking a fast exactly that, like break fast, like breakfast. My history of fasting. Back as a child, well, I sometimes found food boring as F. Therefore, I sometimes barely ate anything, which I only recently discovered is probably the healthiest state you could be in, because most of the time the biological machine that is our body influences our behavior such that we tend to eat as much food as we need, and also the food we need. Ever seen fat wild animals? Nope. You only see them once they have contact with the food we developed or processed in recent history. Because to make it short, the more food you sell in general means more profit for the ones selling the food. Hence, there is an incentive to market food. Also, to make it as delicious and addicting as possible. Ever scrolled down a screen, although you didn't plan on doing it in the first place? This process of making something as addictive as possible in order to increase profit is also done with food. Hence our food addiction. More people nowadays suffer from being overweight than from being malnourished. This is neither a good nor a bad thing, because it is just a relation between two numbers, not necessarily leading to simple conclusions, but still it's the case. Which either says something about the decline of hunger worldwide or the rise of obesity, or both decreasing or increasing at different rates. 40% of people worldwide are overweight or obese, which, to shorten it down, is not an optimal state for many reasons, like shortened lives, for example, or shortened lifespans. Or the simple fact, an overweight person cannot really run, or shouldn't, because they basically are destroying their joints. How then to get there? Right now, much of this kind of so-called bro science, seemingly working methods, are not scientifically backed up, and studies are only recently catching up, or much more, diving deeper into the science behind fasting. But still, there seem to be some things which are results of studies, namely, first, caloric restriction in general increases the lifespan of most animals. Well, wanted to list more, but I cannot really state these as facts, but rather as commonalities or overlap, which is just a different category from the upper. Here they are. Not eating at all for certain periods appears to be easier and healthier than eating significantly less. Our ancestors probably had to go days without food. Not eating seems therefore to be a very natural state. The body mostly switches between two sources for energy usage. External sources, food in your stomach. Internal sources, stored food. Not only, but also between two different types of energy sources. Glycogen, fat. Here is how we eat. Food is made up of macronutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals. Macronutrients are the nutrients providing you with energy. The others are supplementary stuff we need to function. If you get your macronutrients, but forget to supply your body with the proper micronutrients to go alongside a certain unit of energy, you are essentially running off of empty calories. If you compare yourself to a car, it looks like this. You get the energy, meaning the fuel, yes, but it's just the fuel itself. It's like an offer to get as much free fuel as you want, but pay for main maintenance yourself. So you take the offer, as many would, and you drive and drive, refill drive. The problem? You're driving your car to the ground. It for sure will run for some time, but at a certain point, seemingly out of nowhere, all the small things that would have needed maintenance during your happy driving on empty calories, time suddenly accumulate, and you cannot get your car running unless you pay several thousand in maintenance. The tire has got no profile. You lost some screws along the way because you never bothered to tighten them. Stuff like that. And then suddenly, you lose a tire during driving. And since you are used to driving at 100 kilometers per hour, losing a tire at this speed turns out to be very fatal. You crash, and that's what happens to your body without micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. For every liter of fuel or amount of energy measured in kilocalories, you also need a proper amount of maintenance to go along with the unit of energy. And if you skip these, you crash, which results in many people living happy lives, eating fast food, burger, lots of refined carbohydrates, and then suddenly crashing down. But back to fasting. What happens when we eat is this. The food gets used and the rest gets stored in short-term and long-term storage. When food gets digested, the nutrients get into your bloodstream. From there, all cells just take whatever they need. Whenever you eat, insulin gets released, which allows the cells to take what they need, because it opens up the cells and lets the nutrients flow in, like a gatekeeper that regulates the flow of the nutrients in your blood. Then, when your cells are full, the rest is just useless, provided the steady stream of nutrients from your digestive system is bigger than your energy consumption. And if that is the case, the left nutrients are stored for long-term usage in your freezer. This means it takes longer to get to the freezer and also longer to defreeze the nutrients again. And this freezer is fat. Literally. But chances are you don't eat all the time. Therefore, there isn't always a stream of nutrients from your digestive system, and the body has to have an alternative for that. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the energy to run anymore. Your average energy need is indeed pretty constant. Of course, it peaks during times when you perform physical activity, and is the lowest when you don't do anything but sleeping. But still, on average, your energy consumption is indeed pretty average. Basically, you could call all carbohydrates sugar. The difference is just how hard it is for the body to break these molecules into the small units it actually can use. But there are also the other macronutrients, protein and fat. So when there is sugar or carbohydrates in the food, they go right into your blood. The other two also, but the big difference is carbs can be used right out of the bloodstream. Your brain, for example, runs on a minimum of 30% glycogen all the time. Glycogen is the form of carbs your body uses to short-term store the carbs it got from the digestive system, and is the main unit of energy in your body. But you can also use the other two macronutrients. Should it be. For energy consumption, protein has about the same energy density as carbohydrates. Fat has double the energy per weight, meaning it is double as energy dense as the other two. Protein is needed to build stuff, therefore your body only burns them for fuel, or it for fuel, whenever it has too much. And since protein cannot really be stored, it then uses the leftover protein. But with fat and carbs, it's different. Both can be stored in their original form. Carbs get stored in the muscles and liver as glycogen. The amount depends on your fitness level. The fitter you are, the bigger your muscle space for glycogen is, and also simply the size of your body. But the storage for glycogen is limited. According to studies, the average Joe can store about 15 grams of glycogen per kilogram of body mass. Let's say you weigh in at 70 kilograms. That's 70 kilograms times 15 grams is 1050 grams. 1,050 grams, or almost exactly 1 kilogram of glycogen stored in your muscles and liver. If you then wanted to use that again for general purposes, you can only access the glycogen in your muscles via using the muscles. They don't see the point in giving away their valuable glycogen to other cells in the body. Why? Because glycogen is very easy to use, can be broken up into energy very fast compared to protein and fat, and therefore is the way to go whenever you need to restore your body's ATP and KTP, with both being the ultimate energy cache, or in the metaphor of freezer and fridge, ATP and KTP are the food that's already prepared and cooked. You can eat it right away. So your body needs energy. What happens? It first uses the glycogen in your bloodstream, but that's not much. And when that's empty, your blood sugar gets low. And since many cells need to run on glycogen, or at least to a certain amount on glycogen, there will always be a need for a constant supply of glycogen. Fat can also be broken into glycogen, but that's very slow. Therefore, when you are low in blood sugar, your body is like, what about food? And you get hungry. Your body could also use the glycogen in the liver, and indeed it does. But that's not very much. Compared to the 1 kilogram of overall glycogen, the liver glycogen is about 100 grams to 200 grams. For an average person with 70 kilograms, maybe 150 grams. How much is that? Glycogen has an energy density of about 4 kilocalories per gram. Fat 9 kilocalories per gram, and protein nearly the same as carbs or glycogen. In short, your liver glycogen only lasts about 150 grams times 4 kilocalories equals 600 kilocalories. An average male probably needs around 2,000 kilocalories a day. Females, due to their smaller bodies, less. We take 2,000 kilocalories per day and simplify it again. That's about 100 kilocalories per hour, or energy consumption. 2,000 for a 70 kilogram male doing some activity is probably more on the lower side. Therefore, 100 kilocalories per hour should be more or less a good estimate. Now you run on your 600 kilocalories of liver glycogen for maybe 6 hours maximum. But your body cannot live without a steady stream of glycogen, as already discussed, so you get hungry. But why is sugar not good? Because the less complex food is, the faster it gets broken down. The more nutrients per time get released into your blood. Therefore, insulin rises much faster. Your body wants to store all the food in your cells. Even if it could use all the glycogen in a few hours, it just cannot store the sheer amount of food, and the cells cannot do anything against it, since the gatekeeper, insulin, just commands them to take everything out of the bloodstream. That also means what is too much gets stored as fat. At least that's more likely. So in short, the more complex food is, the longer it takes to break it down and get to its nutrients. Therefore, the stream of nutrients from your digestive system into your blood is steadier, which leads to less insulin and effectively to your digestive system acting as an active energy provider, as long as it delivers. In comparison, if the food is less complex, aka refined sugar, and this results in a huge energy spike, therefore an explosion in blood sugar, and therefore also an insulin spike. Since very high blood sugar levels are basically toxic for your body, damaging cells and blood vessels. So what we want is food as complex as possible. It stabilizes the whole process of food intake. You don't want the big spikes in blood sugar and blood insulin, and if you can avoid them, you are not completely high on sugar, then followed by a hangry phase leading to you eating again, resulting in high blood sugar and insulin, then a sugar high, then a drop in blood sugar, and the cycle repeats itself. But what about fat? What about the fat? Well, your body does indeed also use its fat stores, aka the freezer, but since it's frozen stuff and it is frozen stuff, and the freezer is often in the basement and not next to the kitchen table. It just takes longer to get the energy out of there. Imagine bringing up a few things you got from the freezer, then waiting for them thawing for ages. And you can only get so much on one haul to the freezer. And also, it's nice to always have something in the freezer. You never know when bad times await you. And out of all these reasons, getting energy from fat is not the go-to thing for you, buddy, whenever your blood sugar drops, but more of a backup option that doesn't provide as much energy per time. Takes long to finally get up running, and this results in the basic paradox of fat storage, and also more and more of us being hungry and fat simultaneously. But what if you somehow could get the utilization of fat more efficient? What if you could train your body to use fat faster and better? Well, it turns out you can do exactly that. Basically, you can move your freezer closer to the kitchen and maybe get a microwave to fasten up the process of retrieving energy from frozen stuff, aka fat. There are two main ways to fasten up this process: fasting and the keto diet. Is a way to avoid almost everything that spikes your insulin. Fat doesn't spike insulin, carbs do. Very simple carbs like white sugar quite drastically. Protein also does, but not as much. And also there is no way around the insulin spikes resulting from protein intake because we need protein, just as fat. And carbs? Turns out, since the body can make carbs or glycogen from fat and protein, there is no actual need of eating carbs to begin with. And just like that, you avoid most crappy foods nowadays. The big insulin spikes and also the big hunger afterwards. Essentially, the keto diet is a way to do just that. Reducing carbs to a minimum and using all the benefits of that. What your food intake mainly consists of: fat and protein. And since your body doesn't get carbs by you eating them, it has to get them from fat and protein all the time. Therefore, when your insulin and blood sugar drops after a meal, your freezer is right there in the kitchen, ready to take over again, and also there is a microwave to do that real fast. Fasting works basically the same. You force your body into using fat as an energy source, but instead of eating only fat and protein-rich foods, you just don't eat entirely. Therefore, you get much quicker results since on the process to a body highly capable of running on fat as the main energy source, skipping all the meals and energy spikes is just the best way to fat adapting your body. And that's almost everything you need to know right now. What about the brain and other organs needing glycogen? Well, turns out the brain can run on up to 70% of ketone bodies, a byproduct of glyconeogenesis, the name for the process of making glycogen out of fat. And the rest is just glycogen made from fat. Your glycogen stores in muscles and liver just get refilled with glycogen from fat. And this also means your peak performance when doing physical activity is not actually limited by the maximum energy per time you get from breaking up fats, but since you still got the glycogen as a buffer, it's just the same as compared to you running on carbs. The only thing that's missing when fasting, the nutrient stream from your digestive system. But on the other hand, whenever your body needs to switch from breaking down glycogen into breaking down fat, since it is now more adapted to that, the switch happens much faster, since the freezer and the microwave are ready to rumble. And you are now too. This means you now finally have everything you need to know for the next part, which is how to fast, and breaking down how I did fast for 5 days straight, how it actually worked, and if it was as hard as it sounds. Till then, here is another summary. The more complex your food, the better. The smaller the insulin spike, the better. The smaller your blood sugar variations, the better. Your body uses the macronutrients, carbs, protein, fat, and fat for energy. You do need micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals along with every unit of macronutrients, otherwise your car, aka your body, suffers long term. Switching to retrieving energy from fat is more stable since blood sugar and insulin are more stable. You can up the efficiency of running on fat by either the keto diet or the ketogenic diet or fasting, or less extreme by simply reducing very simple foods and eating more complex sources of energy.